On today's episode of Yeti's Place, I'm going to show you how to brush your dog using a Chris Christensen 35mm brush. Now this brush is an oval brush and it has the long 1 3/4 inch bristles. And this is important for a dog with a long coat. Now the Chris Christensen brushes are linked in our description below, and they're really nice brushes because they're flexible. Now in prior episodes you have seen me use this hairbrush. This has short bristles on a long fur dog. It doesn't really work very well. These bristles are really sharp, which is why when I would finish brushing Yeti, I would be left with scratches all up and down my arms because this bristle brush would often scratch my skin and hurt me. The cheap dog fur brushes are ones like this. The cheap, scratchy brushes with the really thin bristles. If you look at the difference between the bristles, there's a huge difference. These are about 1/4 inch thick. These are over 1 inch thick, 1.37 inches thick. These guys are gonna be long and they're going to be able to get through Yeti's fur really nicely. And in fact, when I use this hairbrush, I'm calling it a hairbrush because it is like a hairbrush. In fact, when I first got this, I was brushing my hair using this guy. Yeti is able to let me brush his head, which he's never ever done before with me using his old hairbrush, because his old brush would scratch him and me. But look at how nicely he's being. He's even kissing me. He never kisses me when I'm brushing him. He's normally mad at me when I'm brushing him. But using a brush like the Chris Christensen brush, your dog will sit really nicely for you while you're brushing. And it's also getting down in there pretty nicely. Something that my Yeti never ever liked me doing before when I was using this brush is getting his chest. Yeti would always scoot away because it would hurt him, and I didn't know that. And then when I got this brush, I gave it a test run, and Yeti actually sat still for me while I'm brushing this area because he likes the massage that it gives. Now I'm holding his fur up with one hand, my left hand, and then with the other hand, my right hand, because I'm right-handed, I'm using the oval brush to go down. Now I am turning it this way too to get areas. So you just have to find the right fit for you. Now when Yeti is over on this side, I am brushing him using my left hand, and then I'm using my right hand to hold the fur back. Now this brush is really nice because it's getting down deep into his fur, whereas the other brush that I had used before would not get deeply down into his fur. The bristles are a little bit more wider spaced, which is going to allow me to get through his fur a little bit more easily. But he's letting me get his head, and he never lets me get his head. You can also clean your dog's eyes. Like, I've gotten Yeti used to me cleaning out his eyes since he was little. When I brought him home when he was 8 weeks old, I got him used to this. And how I did that was I held a treat up while my other hand worked on his eyes. Now, those of you who have a thicker coated Sammy might not care very much for this brush because the bristles are really wide, and this brush might not be able to get through all of that thick fur really easily. So the Chris Christensen makes a multitude of other brushes. One of the other brushes is called the Big G, and I will be getting that in time. The Big G is quite a bit more expensive than this. This was, I think this one was $34, which is an expensive brush for a dog brush, but it's so nice and smooth. Like, look at, I'm able to go like this and not have any scratches. If I went with this one, these bristles, like, you can hear them, and that feeling is not pleasant, and nor does it feel good either, because these are like razor blades, almost that bad. I'm gonna call this brush the CC brush because saying Chris Christensen is getting a little bit tough. You like this brush, don't you, sweetie? But boy, this is getting his belly really nicely brushed. Like, look at how patient my dog is with me and the brush. Like, this brush is not at all scratching him. He's not even really noticing that I'm brushing him. He's just laying there sleeping. It is getting his coat really nicely groomed though, much better than his other brushes had. And it's much more comfortable for my dog too. It's getting out a lot of his fur. Now, I had always struggled beforehand. Like, look at how nicely it got the fur out. Beforehand, using this brush, this sharp little brush, there was always fur that was stuck in this brush that I could not get rid of. This brush, I'm able to get rid of all of it, which is really nice. And Yeti is just laying here like a really nice fuzz pup, letting me brush him, which would be unheard of if I use this guy. Yeti would get up and wander away so many times. Now, I did get a grooming table, and I thought, oh, this one will be a good size for him. 32 inches. And I didn't realize that when I got it. I set it up. I thought, oh goodness, this is really small. Tried putting Yeti on it, and it honestly fit him to the edge of his paws, all four paws. That was as big as it was. And it wouldn't have worked well, especially not if I had bumped him and he fell off of it. That would have been really dangerous and bad for him. Some people actually don't mind grooming their dogs on the floor because some people's dogs get used to being groomed and they're okay with just laying on the floor while their owners brush them. This brush is really nice. Poofing him out nicely. So far, brushing Yeti using this brush, I have not once scratched my arm and made it bleed. Normally, if I was using any one of his other brushes from the pet store that were cheaper brushes, I would be bleeding. I'd be scratched up and I'd be bleeding. Like, it would have looked as though I got into a fight with a cat. And again, I'm just taking one hand, like the free hand, the hand that's not holding the brush, and I'm just holding Yeti's fur back while with the hand with the brush, I'm stroking away from that hand to separate the fur. If your dog has a shorter coat than a Sammy, your technique can be a little bit different. You can just go through and brush them without needing to separate the fur, but with Yeti's coat being thick like it is, Sammys have very thick double coats. It's easier if you separate it. These brushes are fantastic for brushing your dog's tail because they're going to be nice and gentle. Now, the tail feels different than the rest of their bodies feel because the tail is a little bit more coarse and wiry. This gets through it really nicely, and it's not irritating Yeti at all. People have asked, how frequently should you brush a Sammy? My answer is always on a daily basis to a few times weekly. Now, I'm trying to get back here, back by his butt, because if you saw in a previous video of ours where we went on a dog walk, you might have noticed that Yeti had some bad poopy butt going on. And that bad poopy butt was caused by me not brushing him thoroughly. Normally, when I'm brushing Yeti, he's always sitting down where I can't get to his butt area. Now, on a Sammy, their coat should never ever be trimmed. Of course, there's a lot of fur back by his butt area. If they have diarrhea or a little bit of a sushi poop, fur around that area gets a little dirty. Yeti is not even letting me get to that area right now because he's holding his tail down. Can't even get to the butt area. If you have your dog on a grooming table, of course, getting to that back area is much easier. You like this brush, don't you, sweetie? Feels good, doesn't it? This brush is really nice for underneath his legs because, like, the legs get some mats in them. Occasionally can mat up around the armpits and even right here. And this brush has been doing a great job with letting me get all of those areas detangled really nicely without pulling on the fur. It was getting really warm in here with my long sleeves on, trying to brush him, so I changed into short sleeves. Now, the reason I have this sheet laying on the floor is because Yeti sheds a lot, and I don't want his fur just getting everywhere. So I put this sheet down as a means to keep that fur under control. Sometimes when I brush my dog, I do like brushing his mane up to help give it more of a poof effect. And again, that depends on how I'm brushing him in the position he's laying in. Boy, I really like this brush. This brush is really nice. And it has flexible, super flexible tines on it because it's in a rubberized base. Just scoots around really nicely. You'll always notice on my videos that normally I don't have Yeti on a collar when he's in the house. When he's out on a walk with me, of course I'll have him on the collar, and then I'll have him on his harness. Now the reason I don't have his collar on him in the house is because the collar can break the fur. Another important reason to get a brush like the Chris Christensen, the CC brush, because that won't break their fur. So the moment Yeti and I walk in the house, he gets his leash taken off, and then he gets his collar taken off. And the leash I have on him it's connected to his harness, and his harness sits across his belly and then it goes in the front of him. Oh yes, he likes this brushing. He never likes having his belly brushed. Thanks to the CC brush, he now likes it. It's nice and comfortable for you, isn't it, sweetie? You gonna sneeze? He normally sneezes when I brush or rub his belly. Ugh. I mean, most of the time if he rolls over for me with his other brushes, it'll be for a short time. It won't be like fully on his back like he is right now. Now I will eventually get the CC Big G brush, which is like this brush, only with the tines that are this length. They'll be fully stocked like how this one is, but they won't be sharp like this one. This one was a cheap Petco brush, very, very cheap. And the reason why I want to get the Big G brush or the Big K, either one of those two, would be good brushes to get. They're the slicker brushes with the handle that's down versus the handle that's across, like the oval brush. By having those different types of brushes where you can hold them different ways, that would be nice and handy. Now I normally brush Yeti down and around the mane. Sometimes I brush him up toward his head because it poofs the fur up. But most of the time though, when I do brush him, it's down and back, like from his head back toward his tail, or from his back down toward his legs, like this. I'm brushing him down. Now when I brush Yeti, I normally brush him using a few different types of brushes. The reason is because, like, I personally start with the brush that has the tines more widely spaced, like the oval brush, because it helps get through those matted areas a little bit more gently without pulling on all the fur and dragging all the fur. After you've gone over your dog using the oval brush, then you would go over your dog using the Big G or the Big K, which is a slicker brush like this. I don't have that brush yet, but I will be getting it shortly. Why you want to use a slicker brush after this brush is because the tines are more closely spaced. So therefore you'll be able to do a closer, more detailed grooming job. If you don't want to spend the money on getting the Big G or the Big K, you could do a comb through. And I do have the Chris Christensen, the CC Butter Comb 505, the 8.5 inch with the tines that are all evenly spaced. I think it's for the coarse coat. The owners who have a grooming table, I've always been curious as to how you can get their belly really nicely, because like Yeti was rolled over and that was really nice to get his belly. And how do you get their nails trimmed too? Then the other thing that I've been wondering about with grooming tables, how can you possibly pick up a heavy dog like Yeti and place him on the grooming table if he doesn't like being groomed to begin with? If you enjoyed this video, be sure to check out this one, because these videos will help teach you more tips and tricks on how to groom a Sammy. Thanks for watching. We'll bark at you next time.